So we're coming into election time, and the reality is Republicans are ready to overthrow the United States. So these elections are the most important of your lifetime. If you haven't registered to vote, do it. Get everyone in your family to vote out a straight Democratic ticket. Because this, this right here is the plan for the Republicans to overthrow this election and everyone coming forward. Gateway Pundit, Trump's website, has a traitorous guide to steal the election. This 11-page guide should tell you all that you need to know for voting this time around. They say, one thing we learned from the 2020 election is that post-election litigation does not prevent Democrats from cheating and stealing elections. It's time to be proactive and step up before the midterm elections. So, Republicans, and this is putting it forward, don't believe the judges will help them. And the judiciary is corrupt. So all the judges that they put on the courts, they get no credit for anything that they do because they don't do everything for the Republicans. Get it? Nothing you do will ever be good enough unless you are willing to do every single thing for them every single time. They go on further. They say most election officials won't disclose the exact number of ballots, printed, mailed, or the list provided. Some jurisdictions send initial qualifier voter file mailing list to the print vendor. The vendor mails the ballots to each voter on the list, but jurisdictions then give these print vendors supplemental lists as new voter registrations arrive. Multiple lists creates chaos, duplication, extras, and so on. Demand your county obtain written answers directly from the vendor and provide you with those actual vendor responses. So, more delusional conspiracies that never had any support whatsoever. The Republican Party is going further and further into wackadoo. And let's face it, they like it there. It goes on. Complaints from GOP poll workers and observers fall on deaf ears or get dismissed as partisan disruptions. Negotiate a resolution in a timely fashion or require a temporary shutdown of the facility area. So, Republicans want to, once again, stop counting the vote. Straight up traitor talk, isn't it? Not really a surprise. They want to send the issue and the people obstruction to the media in real time. This includes local radio, TV, national sites, social media influence, and so on. Have these contacts ready beforehand. Republicans are going to show up en masse and threaten violence whenever there is a call on social media. Remember when W lost the election and a whole bunch of Republicans showed up and threatened people to stop the vote? Then the Supreme Court just decided to put W in office. They will do it again. This is going to have more violence all over the United States in places where no one has any votes anyways. There will be no ballot someplace. Republicans will not understand what is going on. They'll put a call out on social media and a whole bunch of their whack jobs will show up demanding to see the ballots that aren't there. How do you think that's going to turn out? This traitorous little guide continues. Maybe rent a motorhome for the very problematic tabulation centers. Park it close to the facility as the command center. This is hard work, so have some fun too. Bad actors are always looking for places where they can deposit large volumes of ballots at one time. Because of a court ruling 2 days before the 2020 elections, jurisdictions allowed USPS to deliver ballots directly to vote centers in 12 districts. This must stop. It's important to have eyeballs on these locations and disrupt this activity. So, this guy is actually telling the Republicans that they need to disrupt the voting process. And since they're not all that bright, they're going to disrupt legal things because, let's face it, they have never found anything illegal. So, how exactly are this traitorous little document going to play out? We're going to see people with guns running to anything that they hear on social media. I bet a whole bunch of people out there can get a whole bunch of Republicans going down to the police stations all across this nation because they seen them writing on ballots. I mean, they're delusional and easily manipulated. So those of you out there, do not send them to the police stations or FBI offices demanding to see ballots, because that could get them arrested and their gun rights taken away. We don't want to see that now, do we? It continues. When they're talking about issues that they had with those that were in charge, they say their offices are located blocks away, shielded from election workers and valid complaints. Poll workers need an external team with a backbone to contact top officials, walk right into their office, and demand they follow the law. Sounds like they will commit crimes at the drop of a hat now, doesn't it? Poll worker building entry forms, new rules. Fully credentialed GOP workers and observers have been stalled as much as 5 hours before they're allowed to enter into facilities. This is especially true in Pennsylvania. One tactic deployed by gatekeepers is that you are not on their new list. They will use several other excuses as well. Expect this subterfuge to happen, especially on election day and those counting days that follow. Provide GOP workers the appropriate contact information and the steps to take if this occurs. Some jurisdictions will now require observers and poll workers to fill out forms at the end of their shift. They must list any problems they notice during their shift. This is to discredit citizens at a later date if they bring up something not on the form. So, faulty memory will no longer get in the way. Scary for Republicans, because they're told things after the fact, come to conclusions that are, blatantly crazy, and make wild accusations. Now, since these wild accusations are insanely stupid and proven wrong, they get upset, threaten violence, and no one has ever done anything wrong. It goes on. The radical left infiltrated GOP poll workers' training. Their media allies push the narrative that GOP training is biased and creating overzealous election workers. This fake news is meant to provide cover for the sketchy election jurisdictions. No observer should be forced to stay in a tiny boxed-off area or be restricted from speaking to anyone other than an assigned supervisor or other craziness. Learn any new rules and push back before November 8th. This was a problem last time when Republicans did not want to follow the rules and did not report things to the higher up in command and just threatened those around them. It is crazy, but they are willing to overthrow the United States all because they don't want to admit that they were wrong. and they provide even further. Please visit the original Gateway Pundit article and post your suggestion in the comments section. If your suggestions needs a more private disclosure, contact Gateway Pundit directly using this email. The entire thing is a delusional conspiracy theories wrapped up into Republicans' fake patriotism. And this massive organization of Republicans, because they're not smart enough to actually learn the rules, nor are they smart enough to actually understand that none of this delusional stuff ever happened, they will continue to provide new delusional conspiracy theories to justify their hatred and bigotry and explanations of why they lost. Now, here's a nice little thing. Cameras will be helpful only when people start being prosecuted en masse and then flip to reveal their employers. Yes, Gateway Pundit believes that there is a massive conspiracy that they're not smart enough to figure out that is stopping Republicans from winning elections. Now, who does that sound like? So it has come down to this. Republicans are threatening to destroy the entire United States if they win the House and they don't get their way. U.S. Representative Don Beyer, chair of the Joint Economics Committee, Democrats blasted House Republicans, warning they plan to hold the U.S. economy hostage with the threat of a catastrophic default to try to force cuts to Social Security and Medicare. Social Security and Medicare eligibility changes, spending caps, and safety net work requirements are among the top priorities for key House Republicans who want to use next year's debt limit deadline to extract concessions from Democrats, Bloomberg Law reports. The 4 Republicans interested in serving as House Budget Committee chairman in the next Congress said in interviews that next year's deadline to raise or suspend the debt ceiling is a point of leverage if their party can win control of the House in November's midterm elections. And should be a surprise to no one, but once again showing that the business community's fears of Republicans actually getting control is true. Republicans are willing to destroy the United States, crash the economy, all because they want their things passed. Now, the fact is, over the last 40 years, we have never had a fully controlled Democrat House, Senate, and White House shut down the United States. But it always is the Republicans that shut down the United States. The thing that Biden should do is say very clearly, the Congress passed laws saying I need to spend this money. The debt limit ceiling doesn't matter because Congress passed the requirement for me to spend this money second. And since it's the last thing they passed, obviously they want me to spend this money. Make it go to the Supreme Court. Make the 6 Republicans that want to rule over the United States as dictators say that Congress can pass laws, but the president does not have to act on them because there are other laws that supersede them because they were passed a long time ago. It's unlikely that they're willing to go that far because, let's face it, Democrats are much better at finding past laws that they would want to use. So, that would be very unlikely to pass the Supreme Court. it's very unlikely that they would stop a president from upholding the laws Congress passed after the debt ceiling was raised last time. If Republicans gain control of Congress, they are planning to threaten a global financial meltdown if they don't get their way on cutting Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, writes Media Matters for American senior fellow Matthew Gertz. Extreme MAGA Republicans openly threatening to cause economic catastrophe in order to achieve their dreams of slashing Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security is how Speaker Nancy Pelosi Communications Director Henry Connolly has put it. The fact is, Republicans have failed on anything. All they do is stand in the way and slow Democrats down. Those programs still exist because Republicans have been trying to collapse them, cut them, and remove them for 40 years. What a surprise that they are absolute failures at that. Obamacare is still the law of the land. The EPA still exists, which has been the greatest jobs program the United States has ever passed. They have been failures. However, the Democrats have to decide how to run this country because Republicans are unwilling to learn or do anything for America. So Democrats have to decide if Republicans are actually serious about throwing millions of grandparents out on the street just so they can say they destroyed Social Security. Are they willing to destroy the entire world economy to throw millions of grandparents out onto the street? Why is the media ignoring this? Because this seems like something that should be of interest to them. Republicans threaten to destroy the United States if they gain power. Isn't this what elections are about? What the parties will do if they gain power? Republicans' plan is to destroy Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid to tackle inflation by throwing millions of senior citizens out onto the streets or forcing them back to work. PayPal scared the hell out of Republicans this weekend, and it should tell us quite a bit about what they actually believe of what they're doing. The new policy from the company stated in the fine print that they would fine users $2,500 for misinformation starting November 3rd. Now, as soon as the Republicans threw a little hissy fit about this, the company backed off of their plan. But the question is, why were Republicans so scared that they would be fined money for passing fake information, for misinforming the public? Why were the Republicans so scared that would happen? The California-based company said the new update included inaccurate information. It was all a mistake. They didn't actually say that they were going to fine people $2,500 for passing out fake information. But their policy update, it was published, and it said it prohibited customers from using its services for activities such as sending, posting, or publication of any messages, content, or materials promoting misinformation. So it's truly absurd that we have to pretend that PayPal wasn't planning to do this, and it was all just a mistake. Now, Republicans freaked out because Republicans are the ones pushing the fake information. Now, the former president of Twitter, David Marcus, said in a tweet, a private company now gets to decide to take your money if you say something they disagree with. Insanity. The idiot that wants to force Taiwan surrender to China without a gun fired. because China has been so good on their deal with Hong Kong, Elon Musk tweeted his approval and his agreement with this, pretending that misinformation isn't disagreement is ridiculous and is only clearly the stupidity of the rich, the billionaires, that could delude themselves to think misinformation is a disagreement. I say the sky's up. Republicans say the sky's down. I guess we'll never know what misinformation it is. The lying stupidity spread by the Republicans is what is destroying the United States. And this policy, even though it was extremely short-lived and never actually went into effect, probably would have done a world of good. So, mini Trump DeSantis, after his kidnapping of people for political gain and transporting them illegally to Martha's Vineyard, draws its third lawsuit. Sued for the intentional infliction of emotional distress from his victims, multiple criminal investigations into the kidnapping that happened in Texas, an open government group on Monday asserted in a lawsuit that the DeSantis administration is improperly withholding public records associated with the 2 charter flights that brought nearly 50 Venezuelan migrants to the resort island in Massachusetts. The Florida Center for Government Accountability wants a judge to order DeSantis administration to turn over phone and text logs for DeSantis' chief of staff, as well as records exchanged with the company that set up the flights and copies of the waivers signed by the migrants who were on the flights. Now, DeSantis is a weak and worthless politician, just a mini twiddler, and is hiding the records because were the crimes committed? Will the reality make him look bad? Most likely both of them. People hide evidence because they are guilty. I bet the records are quite bad and show just how little of a man DeSantis really is. I mean, he is pathetically weak. When Twitler says he is pathetic, he sits there and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. You're great." And this is the manly alpha males of the Republican Party. Now the article continues. No public records laws exemption applies that would prevent the inspection or copying of the records sought by plaintiffs, and no exemption has been asserted by defendants, states the lawsuit filed in Circuit Court in Tallahassee. Defendants' refusal to provide records is unreasonable, unjustified, and amounts to an unlawful delay and refusal to provide the records. Documents released so far from the company connected to DeSantis and fundraising for him, because that's how Republicans work. You give them money, they give you tax dollars. They showed the Department of Transportation guidelines for the relocation program said that vendors hired by the state would assist in the relocation of unauthorized aliens who are found in Florida and have agreed to be relocated to another state in the United States or the District of Columbia. DeSantis' right-wing buddy violated what he was supposed to do by kidnapping migrants in Texas, not Florida. Last month, a Democrat senator filed a lawsuit that asked a judge to block DeSantis' ability from spending any more money on the relocation program, which was allotted a budget of $12 million by the Republican-controlled Florida legislature. State Senator Jason Pizzo, a Democrat, contends that the way the state has handled the program violated guidelines that were included in the budget. A Boston-based civil rights law firm has also filed a federal class action lawsuit in Massachusetts that contends the flights were a premeditated, fraudulent, and illegal scheme that misled the group of migrants. That lawsuit alleged people working for DeSantis lured the migrants onto the flights with false promises of jobs in the Boston or Washington. Republicans' delusions end like this because the media doesn't hold them accountable. We have Republicans running all over the United States lying about their records on abortion, yet the media only reports what they say at that moment. For the few brief times they will actually say, hey, they're lying, they won't do that again. They will fact check them once, but as long as they continue to say the same lie over and over again, they fact checked them, so why would you call them out on it a second time? The only reason why Republicans win is because the media doesn't do its job. So Rick Scott, a worthless Republican who has lied constantly and been allowed back on TV, is now full-on Nazi, looking to have Democrats and anyone in the government executed that disagrees with him or any Republican whatsoever. Check out this video of this deluded, worthless person.
Great nations don't automatically last forever. Writing about Rome, historian Will Durant said, "A great civilization is not conquered from without until it has first destroyed itself from within." Think about that. Great civilizations that have collapsed or been conquered by a foreign adversary were first hollowed out from the inside.
Speaking of Americans are the threat to our nation, he is putting "we are the threat," and he isn't stopping there.
We Americans were the most spoiled people on earth. We have been given such a great heritage, and we've taken it for granted. The founding fathers of our country, men like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, men who are now considered to be evil racists according to the top scholars in America's most elite universities. These men set us on a course for success the world has never before seen. We survived the War of 1812, the Civil War, World War I and II, Korea, Vietnam, the Cold War. But now, today, we face the greatest danger we have ever faced. The militant left wing in our country has become the enemy within.
A sitting Republican senator is threatening civil war if they don't get their way. Don't make any mistake. Telling whack jobs that someone is the enemy is the only thing that they need to start committing massive amounts of violence and murdering people, whoever they believe is the one holding them down. The threat that they are arming themselves against will never go away. Authoritarians have always moved the threat just one more person. That's the next target, you mom. Remember the poem, First They Came For? Because that's how it works. Here is something that you should know. People tend to bend to their peer groups. Republicans are extremists, and they will continue to get worse because no one in that party is willing to, pull them back. Republican idiot Rick Scott, not smart enough to have answers or any solutions for the Republicans, but will gladly spread racism, hatred, and bigotry. They will continue to push this hatred and not solve a single problem there is. He was just saying on TV how we need to bring this country together. This is standard authoritarian. Claim somehow that you are reasonable, and so it is not really your fault that you have to overthrow the country because everyone else was being unreasonable.
There you say, oh, that's pretty dramatic. You're calling them the enemy within. Yes, I am, and here's why. Let's do a quick situation report. The militant left has now seized control of our economy, our culture, and our country. When you turn on the news at night, do you even recognize the country you see? Are you worried for your family? Are you worried for your freedoms? The woke left now controls the Democrat Party, the entire federal government, the news media, academia, big tech, Hollywood, most corporate boardrooms, and now even some of our top military leaders.
Those woke people control everything. I'm sorry. What conspiracy theory is this he's spouting? How exactly have we taken control of everything? Is it because people want what we have to offer? It is diabolical how we took over. Give the people what they want. All joking aside, the danger that the nation is in because the Republicans are spreading this delusion. Republicans are provoking their idiot mobs to destroy the United States, and the media is doing nothing but repeating what these traitors have to say and putting them on the air.
They are working hard to redefine our country, silence their opponents, and that means each of you. They're destroying about just everything they touch, and they've got their hands on everything. Here's the thing about what they're trying to destroy. American patriotism, border security, American history, gender, traditional morality, capitalism, fiscal responsibility, opportunity, rugged individualism, Judeo-Christian values, free speech, law enforcement, religious liberty, parental involvement in schools, and even private ownership of firearms.
Republicans have failed at just about everything they have tried to do. To put forward Democrats are trying to take away guns would be the one thing that they were able to stop if, it wasn't another one of the delusional conspiracies. Many people that say that we should interact with Republicans, talk to them, pretend that they have a point, get to really know why they are saying these things. And so we shouldn't push back on the delusional conspiracy theories of trickle-down economics that all of science has said for the last 60 years has been a complete and utter failure. Guns. Democrats aren't coming for guns. In fact, Democrats are working very hard to ensure that gun rights in America never go away. And you know how they are doing that? By being the states with lower crime. So the fact that Republicans are running on crime itself is only because of the media's absolute failure to inform the public that Republicans saying there's anything about crime whatsoever should be laughed at, because Republican states have 45.7% more violent crime and 25% more property crime. But we don't actually hear that. These entry-level conspiracies warp the minds enough to allow the delusions of the bigger conspiracies. Not pushing back and allowing them to tell these lies is the reason we have gotten to the point where Republicans are actively riling up their cult to murder you.
The woke left wants all of that gone. They want to end the American experiment. They want to replace freedom with their control. The elites in the government are telling us what we can and cannot believe, what we can think, and what we can do. They want to completely control our lives. Woke government-run schools, woke government-run healthcare, woke government-run media, woke government-run everything. In their new socialist order, everyone will obey and no one will be allowed to complain. If you do speak up, boom, you're going to be canceled. Your views, if you don't conform with big tech, Fauci, or Neil Young, you're going to be taken off Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. The militant left in America are the modern-day version of book burners.
Ending America and taking everything under control. Book burners, basic Nazi propaganda. Blame other people for what you are currently doing. GOP Tennessee lawmakers suggest burning books. I mean, Republicans, right-wing preachers actually got together to burn books. Conservatives are just openly endorsing book burning now. What a surprise that after we find them threatening and actually burning books, now somehow it's the Democrats that are actually doing that. America is currently one election away from being a totalitarian dictatorship, ending abortions, ending the right to say anything that the Republican Nazis don't like, destruction of private property if they say you can't own that book, and if the Supreme Court doesn't allow it right now, Republicans will gladly add more seats to the court until they can get enough whack jobs on there to turn America into a dictatorship.
Canceling, silencing, and banning from the internet is book burning.
So I like how Rick Scott just redefines what book burning is. It's not that Republicans are actually burning books. No, that's not actual book burning, even though they participate in it. No, not really. It's a surprise that they redefine freedom to mean obedience and patriotism to destroying your country, and thought as to stupidity. Be scared. Subscribe and spread this if you care about freedom. Well, or we can just book burn you by not letting you say racist, bigoted stuff on a private website that they don't want you to say. Cancel culture and all.
These are the most narrow-minded, intolerant people our country has ever seen. They are completely ignorant of both world history and American history. Socialism leads to two things: poverty and oppression. Socialism is not a new idea. It's one of the dumbest, oldest, and most discredited ideas of the 20th century that resulted in the deaths of 100 million people.
Republicans ignore reality because they can't explain why Norway, the most socialist country in the world, is on the top of the list for just about everything that they claim they want. If democratic socialism is so bad, why is Norway so great? The reality is they completely ignore all the capitalist nations across Africa that have failed economies. Because it's not about socialism. It's about control. And these Republicans are so easily manipulated by morons like this that you should pity them.
Yet these Democrats, who have no idea how the real world works, are acting like they just invented socialism. The modern wacky left Democrat has never read George Orwell. They don't know they're making his predictions come true. Let's be clear. What the militant left is now proposing is not simply wrong. It is evil.
Yes, call your opponents evil. Surely will help the world come together. Calling people evil will allow these traitors to pick up arms and murder their fellow Americans. Republicans have insulated themselves by complaining that people call them dumb. This is so when they are stupid. Criticism of it doesn't reach their cult. It's also the same when they say that the media is against them. When the media points out that pedophiles that are sitting members of the Republican Nazi caucus The cult doesn't care because they assume it's media lies. It is strange that Democrats control everything, but they don't really know how the world works. It's almost like they are so stupid and don't understand what he just said. Doesn't make any sense.
It is evil, and the results are evil. Now, the Biden presidency, they brought us one new thing. They have successfully merged radical left-wing policies with complete gross incompetence. It's hurting people. It's hurting families. Rip-roaring inflation, empty shelves, babies in the United States of America without formula. You can't make that happen. You can't believe that.
What has been Republican Nazis' solution? There haven't been any. What law do they propose to solve these problems? Crickets. But the cult hears the truth that they need to kill to defend themselves because no one else has anything for them. You can't believe it if you are based in reality. This is why you can't let Republican Nazis spread any conspiracy theory, because once people have gone down the road a little, it is always ending up here, just a few seconds away from thousands of whack jobs murdering their fellow man and the end of democracy.
Dangerous invasion of our borders, drugs and criminals marching in every day, escalating debt and spending, the inept withdrawal from Afghanistan, left-wing indoctrination of our children in our public schools, and murder all across this country. Criminals are not being prosecuted, but police are being executed. So it makes you think, is this the beginning of the end of America? It could be, but only if we allow it. Now, here's the good news. The backlash is coming. The opposition is building. Americans in flyover country have had enough of this woke, elitist nonsense.
Police are being executed. Republican states have higher crime. All that sounds like they really need to take up arms and start killing other Americans, doesn't it? But where's a single example of this? See, they don't need examples because their cult will just follow right along.
Each of us want our freedom back. I believe it's time to rescue America. As the old saying goes, don't wait for the instructions from headquarters, just mount up and ride to the sound of the guns. It's time to take our country back.
What freedom have they lost? The reality is they're upset because people don't like them. They can't say their racist, bigoted stuff anymore without being looked at as the horrible people that they are. The Civil War started much the same way. The rich people in the South decided that, hey, I don't like the fact that the Northerners have an issue with me raping, beating, and killing my slaves. So I need to form my own country. Yeah, they like to say states' rights, and those in the middle say states' rights to do what? Own slaves. But the reality was, it wasn't about slavery. There was 15 slave states. That means there needed to be 60 states to change the Constitution to outlaw slavery. So there was never any way to get rid of slavery, except that the morons in the South decided to start a civil war, become full-on traitors, because the rich in the South didn't want people saying that they were horrible people for raping and owning others. Ride to the sound of the guns. Mount up. That seems like a lot more than what Twitler said to the Proud Boys. The fact is that Republican Nazis don't want anything but one of them in charge. They don't care what happens. They just don't want to admit that they are wrong. They want to pretend that they are in power. Pity Republicans, because they are this delusional. There is nothing left to be manipulated by pathetic people like this. That's all they got. Can you imagine being so stupid what Scott said made you feel good? Thought that this was a smart person? What it goes on after this to bring up his 11-point plan. Originally, his 11-point plan called for raising taxes on all the morons that were cheering for this racist bigotry and blatantly treasonous talk. His 11-point plan starts off with 1. Forced indoctrinations in the schools, Pledge of Allegiance, and telling the American children that America is great while they destroy the public schools because they want to fund private schools so the rich can have their private schools and be subsidized by your taxes. Again, remember, Rick Scott wanted to raise your taxes so he could further cut the taxes of the rich. 2. Remove the government's ability to ask about race, because if we remove any information that makes it look like people are being racist, then we're no longer a racist nation, right? Isn't that the way it works? If there's no more evidence, we solved racism. Spend more money on cops. Even that blue states have shown how to lower crime, doesn't matter. Just put more money into the cops and give them power to do whatever they feel like because they know how to stop crime, right? Isn't that how it works? 4. Build the wall. You know, the one that cost a couple $2 billion and fell down a year and a half after the fact. They want to stop immigration completely. You know that only requires one law: to make it a crime for a business to hire someone that is not allowed to legally work here. But Republicans have never been willing to do that because no one will come to this country if they can't work. But Republicans actually don't care about that or immigration. The fact is, the reason why America is so brown today is because of Reagan. He cut off the border and all those that came here stayed, had kids. And since, anyone born on American soil is an American citizen, those kids became American citizens. So Republicans are the cause of what they are currently fear-mongering about. Again, Republicans have failed at everything they've tried to do for generations. Number 5, fire 25% of the government workforce, sell government assets, and privatize. Push everything to the local governments. That's 6. This would create a slush fund for Republicans. Democrats would try to run the policies and the programs. Republicans would use it as a slush fund. And the fact is, most of these programs, 90+%, work much better when those bureaucrats in Washington are actually running these. That's why Medicare and Medicaid have such a low overhead cost where private insurance has a massive one. 7. Eliminate what Democrats call voting rights. Here he spouts off more delusions about stolen elections because, there is no proof and anyone that says this should be disqualified from running for office or being allowed on TV, but The Republicans on the networks don't really care and will bring this racist bigot that is actively pushing for the overthrow of the United States back on TV. Number 8. This seems just to be more bigotry. He wants to protect the traditional family from getting defined in any other way. There's also some things in here about socialism, which, that must be why Republicans are trying to get rid of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, because that's all socialism. And number 9 is just blatant transphobia. 10, forcing God, their version of God, back into public life and prevent private companies from doing what they want with their property. As long as it is violating Democrats' rights and Democrats' abilities, they don't care. But as soon as you ban one of their bigots, then Twitter, Facebook, and all the other media platforms, then they get in trouble from the Republicans. And 11, this is where he pretends that he's populist. And, being a business person and a Republican, he has actively encouraged and pushed business out to China because it was cheap. And now he wants to pretend like they're going to actually do something about this. He isn't. Tulsi Gabbard, this extreme right-wing Democrat, has been providing cover for Republicans for years, attacking Democrats because that's where she gets her money. She's pathetic, and the media that called her a progressive for her clearly right-wing presidential campaign should be ashamed of the entire organization. It was clear at the time that no one should listen to Tulsi Gabbard. On progressive issues, it is clear that she is making this statement right now to sway the election back in Republicans' favor. And, let's face it, run for office as a Republican. So let's take a look at this crazy conspiracy idiot. And remember, this is National Coming Out Day. She is going to not give a single example and lob ad hominem attacks because there is no support for Republican bigotry at all.
No longer remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers who are driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism.
Are we cowards or warmongers? The warmonger claim is because we're not allowing Russia to take over Ukraine, because this might cause Russia to launch nuclear weapons, and that's the reason why we're warmongers, because we don't support Russia's invasion in Ukraine. And we're cowards because Republicans have to be the big boys with those guns, and they gotta be the alphas. Yeah, Tulsi knows her racism and stupidity very well because that is who she is.
Who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution, who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, who demonize the police but protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans.
Blue states have lower crime. No one demonizes the police. Everyone wants to believe the police are there to protect us. It's just the fact that there is multiple videotape evidence that the police are committing crimes and violating civil rights. And all Democrats want to do is get out the bad ones that are not lowering crime. What a surprise.
Who believe in open borders, who weaponize the national security state to go after their political opponents, and above all, who are dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. Now, I believe in a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not.
Open borders. Who's the deporter in chief? Obama. Go after political opponents. She is whining that Twitler had a warrant served on him because he stole classified documents, refused to get them back, and told the government he had them and willing to trade them for other stuff. I mean, the sheer stupidity of this should be brought out every single time. Like Twitler saying he lost the election. Every single time we should point out the fact that, Twitler was the president of the United States, had the Senate and the Justice Department, and still not man enough to stop the Democrats from stealing elections? What a beta. Democracy, as in Republican Nazis have to gerrymander the states to win, and they still lose the national vote for the presidency 7 out of the last 8 elections. Tulsi's stupidity isn't all that hard to figure out. She has always been willing to give it up for cash. Check out some of her Fox News propaganda work.
You don't sound like a Democrat to me. I hereby, you can raise your right hand, you're definitely a conservative. So, anyway,
always a pleasure, Sean.
She has been a conservative since she ran for the presidency. And as the conservatives have gone more insane, so has she. Her job to support the right wing was to go on Fox Propaganda Network and say we should all support Republican policies because those seem logical.
Instead, it stands for a government that is of, by, and for the powerful elite. Now, I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party. If you can no longer stomach the direction that the so-called woke Democratic Party ideologues are taking our country, then I invite you to join me.
Yes, leave the Democratic Party and join the Republicans in diving down her insane rabbit hole, pretending that this is a surprise or the media isn't covering this as she is a principled Democrat having issues with what the party and the real differences. And, these are just serious policy differences that she hasn't provided a single instances of. And it's all rhetorical. And the level of the rhetorical stupidity should be disqualifying for anyone listening to her. They are pretending that she was a progressive 2 years ago because she said she was. That is it. Whatever lie comes out of the right-wing mouth, the media has to repeat it. So if you like those videos, please help. The YouTube algorithm is horribly biased against, progressives. And the Republicans have massive amounts of money just to buy it off. So every time you like, every time you put a comment down below, helps us out. So like, subscribe, and if you really want to help the environment, down below is a link to a GoFundMe page where it has a brand new power generation that is 0% carbon emission and one of the cheapest productions of electricity the world has ever had. So go down, help us out.